Have you ever been to a flea market? Rows of tables, piles of forgotten things, junk people don't want anymore. Most of it is nothing but clutter. But sometimes, hidden in the mess, you find something different. Something you should never have touched. That's exactly what Ethan did one Saturday. He thought he'd scored a bargain, his lucky day. But it wasn't luck. It was the beginning of something much darker. This is the story of a gamer and the controller that should have stayed buried. This is the cursed controller. Ethan wasn't much different from most people his age. 26, working IT help desk calls from his apartment. His job drained him, but video games? That was his escape. When the office phone lines closed for the night, Ethan would sit alone in the glow of his screen, controller in hand, and lose himself in worlds that didn't ask for rent money. He didn't have many friends in the city. His voice came alive mostly through group chats and online lobbies, where he could crack jokes and feel like he belonged. In real life, he was quiet. Just another tired face blending into the crowd. On weekends, Ethan wandered flea markets. It wasn't about buying things, just browsing, seeing what odd treasures people left behind. And one Saturday afternoon, he found it. A plain-looking controller sat on a vendor's table, a little black plastic rectangle with buttons worn soft from use. At first glance, it looked ordinary, but along its edges, the plastic was faintly warped, as though it had survived a fire. "Still works," the vendor muttered without looking up. "Modified." Ethan chuckled. "Modified, huh?" He handed over a couple of crumpled bills and left. At home, Ethan plugged it in. The screen flickered to life, and it worked. Instantly. The buttons responded like silk. No lag, no missed inputs, no sticky edges. Every movement flowed like it was reading his mind. The analog stick glided effortlessly, smoother than anything he'd ever touched. It felt like the controller was made for him, like it belonged in his hands. And when the rumble pack kicked in, there was no dull buzz like with his old controller. This vibration felt alive, like a pulse running through his palms. The plastic warmed slightly, as if it were syncing with him, adjusting to his grip. Ethan leaned forward, locked in. He jumped, dodged, fired, attacked. Every move precise, seamless. He wasn't just playing the game, he was inside it. For the first time in months, he lost track of time, sinking deeper into that familiar escape. "Man," he muttered with a grin, "best $2 I've ever spent." For a few rounds, Ethan was convinced he'd stumbled onto something special. A bargain, maybe even a little magic. But then, the sound began. At first it was faint, so soft he barely noticed it under the game's soundtrack. He thought it was his speakers, maybe interference from his old TV. But the more he played, the clearer it became. He pressed a button. A cough, he pressed again. A muffled groan. The vibration kicked suddenly, sharp, jolting his grip. His chest tightened. And then, when he slammed the trigger down, came the scream. Distant, but sharp enough to freeze his blood. He set the controller down slowly, staring at it in disbelief as the warmth faded from its surface. For a long moment, he just sat frozen in the glow of the TV. He forced a nervous laugh, though it sounded hollow in the quiet. Guess that's what I get for a $2 controller. Ethan tried to ignore it. He told himself it was stress, sleep deprivation, maybe a trick of his old TV, but the controller wouldn't be ignored. Every night he sat down, it was warm before he even touched it, like it had been waiting for him. The buttons seemed to respond before his fingers fully pressed them, as if it was anticipating his moves, and every sound that came out of it was sharper. A cough that rattled his lungs. A scream that cracked into a sob. The kind of noises you'd hear if someone was choking on thick, suffocating smoke. He couldn't shake the feeling that every time he pressed down harder, the controller hurt. And the person screaming was him. So one night, Ethan shoved it in a drawer and slammed it shut. For the first time in days, he thought maybe he could sleep. But as he lay in bed, the sound followed him. A faint, muffled choking, bleeding through the wood of the drawer. The vibration of buttons being pressed on their own. And when he closed his eyes, he dreamed of fire. Sleep offered no escape. Every night, Ethan closed his eyes and found himself trapped in the same place. His apartment swallowed by fire. Walls glowing with orange light. Flames licked at the curtains, crawled across the floor, climbed up the walls like living things. His lungs filled with heat and ash until every breath came out as a choking gasp. He screamed for help. And just before he collapsed in the dream, he'd always hear it. Click, the sharp, unmistakable sound of a controller button being pressed. Ethan would jolt awake in his bed, drenched in sweat, his throat sore as though he really had been screaming. The air smelled faintly of smoke, bitter and acrid, even though nothing had burned. At first, he thought it was in his head. Phantom smells, stress. But when he stumbled into the living room, the scent was strongest near the drawer, the controller. Sometimes in the darkness of his apartment, he swore he could hear it vibrating inside the drawer. A faint rattle, a low hum, like it was calling to him. The dreams came back every night, growing worse, more vivid, more real. And each time, the screams he heard weren't just anyone's. They were his. It was as if the controller wasn't just showing him a nightmare, it was rehearsing his death. Ethan swore he wouldn't touch it again. He left the controller in the drawer, ignored it for days, tried to pretend it wasn't there. But one night, just past midnight, he woke to a sound. Click. The unmistakable press of a button. His eyes darted toward the drawer. The faintest vibration rattled the wood. A low, muffled buzz filled the silence. Before he could move, the monitor flickered on. Ethan stumbled out of bed, heart pounding. And there it was. The controller was waiting for him. Warm, humming, almost breathing. Against every instinct, he picked it up. The instant his fingers wrapped around it, the game launched on its own. Not any game he owned, something different. The screen showed his bedroom, engulfed in flames. Smoke rolled across the ceiling. Walls glowed red. The vibration grew violent in his hands, buzzing like a living heartbeat, forcing his thumbs down onto the buttons. And with every press, screams. His screams. Not from the speakers, not from the TV, but from inside the controller. He tried to let go, but the plastic burned against his skin, searing hot. His muscles seized as if the controller wouldn't allow him to drop it. Ethan screamed, stumbling for the door. But the sound of his cries were already playing through the controller, matching perfectly, echoing back at him. The game wasn't predicting anymore. It was playing his death in real time. By the time firefighters broke down the door, it was too late. Ethan was gone. The apartment had gone up fast. Neighbors said they'd heard him screaming, but by the time help arrived, the flames had already swallowed everything. Almost everything. When the ashes cooled, investigators sifted through the debris. Among the melted plastic, charred wood, and blackened metal, one thing survived: a game controller. The plastic casing showed burn marks, but the insides were untouched. And when they traced its origin, that's when they found something chilling. The device had been modified years earlier by an independent developer, a tinkerer obsessed with making gaming feel more alive. But before he ever released his prototype, his home caught fire. He died screaming inside the blaze. And now, every single person who has touched it since has met the same fate, always in fire. Always with their final screams echoing through the plastic shell. The cursed controller doesn't just respond to your games, it plays you. And somewhere out there, it's waiting again, sitting on a shelf, maybe in a pawn shop, waiting for the next set of hands to hold it. Someone else will pick it up. The only question is, will it be you?